24 years ago today that Biggie, whose real name was Christopher Wallace, was gunned down here in Los Angeles. He was just 24 years old when he died.
The night of March 9th, 1997, remains one of the darkest in the history of hip-hop. It was just after midnight in Los Angeles when Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G, Biggie Smalls, or simply Biggie, was gunned down in a drive-by shooting. He had been attending a music industry party, promoting his upcoming album, and enjoying the limelight of being one of the most respected rappers alive. But within minutes, the car he was riding in became a target, and his life was cut short at only 24 years old. The world awoke to headlines of his death, and for fans, it felt like the music itself had been robbed of one of its greatest voices. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Christopher Wallace's rise to fame had been as rapid as it was remarkable. Born on May 21, 1972, in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, he was raised by his mother, Valletta Wallace, a Jamaican immigrant and schoolteacher. His father left the family when Biggie was just a toddler, leaving Valletta to raise him alone. Even as a young boy, Wallace was known for his intelligence, quick wit, and storytelling ability. By the age of 12, he was already experimenting with rhymes, using the rich vocabulary he picked up from books and the vivid experiences of his environment to craft lines that impressed his friends. But Bedford-Stuyvesant in the 1980s was also a place marked by poverty, drug epidemics, and violent crime. And like many young men in his neighborhood, Biggie became entangled in street life. During his teenage years, he sold crack cocaine and got into trouble with the law, serving short stints in jail. Yet, even in the midst of street hustle, his talent for rap shone through. He adopted the moniker Biggie Smalls, inspired by a character from the 1975 film Let's Do It Again, and began performing on street corners, in local battles, and on makeshift stages in Brooklyn. His smooth delivery, distinctive deep voice, and knack for weaving intricate cinematic stories into his verses made him stand out from the crowd. In 1992, a demo tape titled Microphone Murderer caught the attention of Sean Puffy Combs, who was then an A-Day NDR executive at Uptown Records. Combs recognized Biggie's rare combination of street authenticity and lyrical brilliance, and soon signed him to his own new label, Bad Boy Records. From there, Biggie's career skyrocketed. His debut album, Ready to Die 1994, was a masterclass in raw, autobiographical storytelling. Tracks like Juicy celebrated his rise from poverty to fame, while songs such as Gimme the Loot and Warning painted gritty portraits of street life. The album was both commercially successful and critically acclaimed, cementing Biggie as a major force in the rap world. His ability to balance vulnerability with swagger made him relatable, while his complex rhyme schemes and flows earned the respect of even the most skeptical hip-hop purists. But success also brought complications. By the mid-1990s, the rap industry was increasingly divided along East Coast-West Coast lines, with Bad Boy Records in New York and Death Row Records in Los Angeles at the center of a rivalry that the media amplified into a near-mythic feud. Biggie's friendship-turned-rift with West Coast rap icon Tupac Shakur became emblematic of the tension. Tupac accused Biggie and Bad Boy of being involved in a 1994 shooting that left him wounded in New York, an accusation Biggie denied but which fueled resentment. Diss tracks flew back and forth, and the tension escalated into a dangerous cultural moment where musical competition became entangled with real-life threats. Despite the mounting drama, Biggie continued to work. His charisma, humor, and larger-than-life persona drew crowds, while his business acumen and dedication to his craft impressed peers. Yet behind the scenes, he was increasingly uneasy about the direction the industry was taking. Friends recalled that he disliked the idea of East and West Coast rappers being at war, and he often expressed concern for the safety of himself and those around him. The death of Tupac Shakur in September 1996, gunned down in Las Vegas in a similarly mysterious drive-by, shook him deeply. Still, he pressed on with his second album, Life After Death, a sprawling double album that showcased his versatility, blending hardcore street rap with crossover-ready tracks that would appeal to wider audiences. By early 1997, Biggie was in Los Angeles promoting Life After Death, set for release later that month. He gave interviews where he spoke of wanting to move past the beefs and focus on building his career. On the night of March 8th, he attended a Soul Train Awards after party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Surrounded by friends, security, and industry colleagues, he seemed in good spirits. But as the party wound down and he left with his entourage in a convoy of vehicles, fate intervened. At approximately 12:45 a.m., Biggie was seated in the passenger seat of a GMC Suburban when a dark-colored Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside his vehicle at a stoplight. A man in the Impala's driver's side window opened fire, striking Biggie 4 times. The SUV's driver sped toward Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but despite doctors' efforts, he was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. The news traveled fast, sending shockwaves through the music community and leaving fans in disbelief. The murder of the Notorious B.I.G. remains officially unsolved, and over the years it has spawned countless theories and investigations. Some point to the possibility of a retaliatory killing linked to Tupac's death, while others suspect corrupt elements within law enforcement or connections to gang rivalries in Los Angeles. Numerous documentaries, books, and investigative reports have explored the circumstances, but no one has ever been convicted. For Biggie's family and fans, the lack of closure has been almost as painful as the loss itself. In the days following his death, tributes poured in from across the music industry. Radio stations played his songs non-stop, and candlelight vigils were held in cities across the United States. At his funeral in Brooklyn, thousands of fans lined the streets as his casket was driven through his old neighborhood, blasting "Hypnotize" from the speakers. People climbed on rooftops and lampposts to catch a glimpse of the procession, a spontaneous, emotional send-off for a man who had become a symbol of their own aspirations and struggles. 2 weeks later, Life After Death was released and became an instant classic, debuting at #1 on the Billboard charts. Songs like "Mo Money Mo Problems," "Sky's the Limit," and "Going Back to Cali" showcased the range of Biggie's artistry, from playful bravado to introspective reflection. The album went on to be certified diamond, an extremely rare achievement in hip-hop, and stands as one of the most celebrated rap records of all time. Biggie's death also forced the hip-hop community to confront the dangerous intersection of art, business, and real-world violence. For many, his killing was a wake-up call about the consequences of allowing personal feuds and territorial disputes to overshadow the music. Some artists began advocating for unity across coasts, while others pulled back from the spotlight altogether. Yet, despite the calls for peace, the pain of losing 2 of rap's greatest talents within 6 months left an indelible scar. In the years since, Biggie's legacy has only grown. He is consistently ranked among the greatest rappers in history, praised for his storytelling, technical skill, and ability to make every verse feel cinematic. His lyrics continue to resonate with new generations, many of whom weren't even alive when he was recording. His style has influenced countless artists, from Jay-Z and Nas to Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. Samples of his voice and homages to his work appear in music, film, and fashion, ensuring his presence remains woven into the fabric of popular culture. For his mother, Voletta Wallace, and his children, the tragedy is deeply personal. Over the years, they have worked to preserve his memory, launching foundations, attending commemorations, and speaking publicly about the man behind the music. They've emphasized his generosity, his humor, and his dedication to family, qualities that were often overshadowed by his tough public persona. The enduring mystery of who killed Biggie Smalls continues to fascinate and frustrate. LAPD investigations have been hindered by allegations of corruption, missing evidence, and conflicting witness statements. Former detectives and journalists have proposed detailed scenarios implicating various parties, yet none have led to an arrest. The case's unresolved status has fueled conspiracy theories and kept the tragedy alive in public discourse, making it as much a true crime enigma as a cultural loss. In the broader picture, Biggie's story is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the high cost of fame in environments where art and violence intersect. His lyrics, often reflective of his own life's contradictions, now serve as both entertainment and cautionary tale. The same streets that shaped his voice also took him away, and the same industry that celebrated his rise struggled to protect him from the dangers surrounding it. Over 2 decades later, fans still imagine what might have been had he lived, Would he have bridged the East-West divide in hip-hop? Would he have ventured into acting, business, or politics? Would his lyrical evolution have reshaped the genre even further? These unanswered questions only deepen the sense of loss. Yet, amid the grief, there is also celebration. Each year, on his birthday and the anniversary of his death, fans gather to play his music, share stories, and reflect on his impact. Murals of his face adorn walls in Brooklyn and beyond, turning his image into a cultural landmark. Documentaries and biopics keep his story alive for younger audiences, ensuring that the Notorious Big is not merely remembered as a victim of violence, but as an artist whose voice continues to echo across time. The tragedy of Biggie Smalls is not only about the loss of a gifted rapper, it is about the loss of a young man who had just begun to explore his full potential. It is about the promise of music as an escape from hardship, and the cruel irony that the very world he rose above ultimately pulled him back down. His life and death remain intertwined with the history of hip-hop, serving as a testament to both the genre's creative brilliance and its sometimes destructive realities. Christopher Wallace's journey from Brooklyn streets to global stardom is a testament to perseverance, talent, and authenticity. His death, sudden and violent, is a sobering reminder of how fragile even the brightest flames can be. But his legacy, in music, in culture, in the lives he touched, endures, refusing to fade. The beats he laid down, the verses he crafted, and the stories he told continue to inspire, proving that while the man may be gone, the voice of Biggie Smalls will forever remain one of the loudest in the history of music. When the news of Christopher Wallace's murder spread, it didn't just shatter the world of hip-hop, it sent ripples across popular culture, the media, and communities far beyond Brooklyn. People who had never bought a rap record still recognized his image, that wide smile and tilted crown captured in iconic photographs. In the aftermath, there was a strange paradox. His death silenced him physically, yet his voice seemed to grow louder in the collective consciousness. The sheer scope of his influence became even more evident in the months and years that followed, revealing layers to his story that had not been fully appreciated while he was alive. Those closest to him began to speak more openly about the private Biggie, the one who loved cracking jokes, the one who, despite his intimidating presence, had a gentle side. Childhood friends recalled him spending hours in the hallway with a notebook, writing rhymes with obsessive focus. Others remembered his fascination with language, how he would flip through a dictionary and jot down unusual words to weave into his verses. Even in moments of hardship, he approached storytelling with a creative precision that would later define his art. The tragedy of his early death was sharpened by the realization that his evolution as a lyricist had only just begun. In the wake of his passing, Brooklyn itself seemed to take on a new symbolic role. Streets that had once been just another part of the city now became landmarks for fans making pilgrimages to see where the legend began. Fulton Street, St. James Place, and the corner stores of Bed-Stuy were immortalized in lyrics. But now they also existed as touchstones for grieving admirers. Local businesses painted murals in his honor, not as tourist attractions at first, but as sincere memorials. They depicted him with halos, with angelic wings, with crowns, imagery that would become standard in visual tributes. This transformation of physical space into a living memorial highlighted how deeply Biggie had become entwined with the identity of his community. Meanwhile, the music industry faced an uncomfortable reckoning. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry that had been stoked by magazines, radio personalities, and even some record executives suddenly felt less like entertainment and more like a dangerous miscalculation. Behind closed doors, conversations shifted from how to outdo competitors to how to keep artists alive. There was recognition that the line between art and reality had been blurred to a dangerous degree, and that both Biggie and Tupac had been casualties of an environment that rewarded provocation without accounting for the consequences. For the people around Biggie, grief was not a quiet process. Sean "Puffy" Combs, who had been not only Biggie's label boss but also one of his closest friends, became a central figure in preserving his legacy. He spoke about Biggie in interviews, organized tributes, and famously recorded "I'll Be Missing You" with Faith Evans in 112, a track that directly addressed the loss and became a global hit. The song wasn't just a chart-topping single, it was a cultural moment, a collective expression of mourning that brought rap, R&B, and mainstream pop audiences together in shared grief. Faith Evans, Biggie's wife and mother of his son Christopher Jr., faced the dual challenge of raising their child while navigating a public that saw her marriage as part of the larger drama surrounding his life. Her own musical career became a way of keeping his spirit alive, whether through collaborations, performances, or interviews where she described the love they shared and the struggles they endured. She often spoke about the private man, the devoted father who loved spending time at home, as a way of balancing the public perception of Biggie as a towering rap icon. Another powerful way his legacy continued was through the work of artists who saw themselves as heirs to his style. Jay-Z, who had known Biggie personally and collaborated with him, became one of the most vocal torchbearers. He often referenced Biggie in his lyrics, not just through direct shoutouts, but by subtly reworking lines from Biggie's catalog, a gesture of homage rather than theft. Other rappers across different generations found inspiration in his ability to mix humor with menace, vulnerability with bravado. His influence could be heard not only in the East Coast rap that followed, but also in the storytelling traditions of artists far removed from his era. Outside of music, Biggie's persona began to take root in fashion, film, and street art. His penchant for Coogie sweaters, Kangol hats, and tailored leather jackets became part of hip-hop fashion lore. Clothing brands released lines inspired by his style, sometimes officially licensed, other times bootlegged by fans who wanted to wear his image proudly. In film, depictions of his life range from documentaries to biopics, each offering a slightly different perspective on who he was and how his story unfolded. The 2009 film Notorious dramatized his life for a new audience, introducing his music to people who may not have been familiar with him in the 1990s. The unsolved nature of his murder became a story in its own right, pulling in journalists, former detectives, and amateur sleuths. Television specials and investigative books delved into theories involving rival record labels, gang connections, and possible law enforcement complicity. One of the most persistent frustrations for his fans was the sense that there had been opportunities to solve the case early on, but they were lost due to bureaucratic missteps, unwilling witnesses, or deliberate obstruction. This lingering lack of justice gave the tragedy an added layer of bitterness, as if the world had been robbed twice, first of his life, and then of the truth about his death. As the years passed, his children grew up under the shadow of his legacy. Christopher Wallace Jr., known as CJ, pursued acting and music, carefully balancing respect for his father's legacy with his own creative ambitions. His daughter, Tiana Wallace, became involved in entrepreneurship and design, launching fashion lines that paid tribute to her father's name. For them, the tragedy was not a distant cultural event, but a personal loss that shaped the course of their lives. In interviews, they have both spoken about learning who their father was through the memories of others, piecing together an image of a man they knew only in early childhood. Biggie's artistry has been dissected by scholars, critics, and fellow musicians, each attempting to explain what made his work so powerful. Some point to his intricate internal rhymes and multisyllabic patterns, which gave his verses a musicality that went beyond simple rhythm. Others highlight his narrative abilities, the way he could place the listener inside a scene, making them feel the tension, humor, or fear he was describing. Unlike many artists who specialized in one type of song, Biggie could shift seamlessly between braggadocious club anthems and deeply introspective confessions. That versatility is part of why his music has endured, capable of resonating with different moods and audiences over decades. In the years after his death, the hip-hop landscape changed dramatically, moving into the mainstream in ways that were less common during his time. Rappers became moguls, fashion icons, and movie stars, and the industry's global reach expanded. Yet even as new stars emerged, Biggie's name remained a constant reference point, the gold standard for lyricism and authenticity. This was not just nostalgia, it was a recognition that he had set a benchmark in a relatively short career that many have struggled to match, even with far longer discographies. Brooklyn's relationship with Biggie's memory also evolved. Annual events celebrating his birthday began to draw large crowds, with DJs spinning his tracks late into the night. City officials, once reluctant to publicly honor a figure associated with street life, eventually embraced his cultural significance. In 2019, The intersection of Fulton Street and St. James Place was officially renamed Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Wallace Way, a symbolic gesture that acknowledged his transformation from neighborhood figure to global icon. Residents spoke about how the renaming gave young people a sense of pride, a reminder that someone from their blocks had made an indelible mark on the world. In academic settings, Biggie's work has been analyzed for its linguistic innovation and socio-political commentary. University courses on hip-hop often include Ready to Die and Life After Death as primary texts, inviting students to study them alongside classic literature. His use of metaphor, narrative arcs, and shifts in perspective are examined as deliberate artistic choices, placing him in a lineage of great storytellers. These analyses have helped push back against outdated notions that rap is a lesser art form, demonstrating that its best practitioners are as sophisticated as novelists or poets. There is also a spiritual dimension to how fans remember him. Some speak of his music as a guiding influence during difficult times, a voice that articulated their own struggles and aspirations. Others see him as a figure of almost mythic proportions, someone whose story contains elements of both triumph and tragedy in a way that feels timeless. This mythologizing is not without risk. It can sometimes overshadow the human being behind the legend, but it also speaks to how deeply his presence is felt even decades later. Internationally, Biggie's influence spread far beyond the English-speaking world. His records found listeners in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, where artists adapted his style into their own languages and cultural contexts. In places where hip-hop was still emerging as a genre, his music served as a blueprint for what rap could be: complex, emotionally resonant, and unapologetically rooted in personal experience. It's not unusual to find young rappers in completely different cultural environments citing him as an inspiration, proof that his work transcends geography. The relationship between Biggie's death and the broader American conversation about violence is another layer of the tragedy. For some, his killing became a symbol of the dangers young black men face, even after achieving fame and wealth. Discussions about gun violence, policing, and the treatment of black celebrities often reference his and Tupac's deaths as cautionary tales. Activists have used his story to highlight systemic issues, arguing that the cycle of violence in underserved communities continues to claim lives with devastating regularity. Musically, the posthumous releases and remixes kept his voice in circulation. Producers reimagined his verses over new beats, DJs blended his acapellas with contemporary tracks, and collaborations with artists he had never met in life were assembled through studio wizardry. While some purists argued against altering his original work, others saw it as a way of keeping him relevant to younger audiences. Each release sparked renewed interest, sending listeners back to the original albums to appreciate them anew. There is also an undeniable cinematic quality to his story, one that has made it a favorite subject for documentary filmmakers. Projects like Biggie and Tupac and Biggie, I Got a Story to Tell attempted to go beyond the headlines, combining archival footage with personal interviews to paint a fuller picture of the man. These films offered glimpses of him laughing with friends, performing in small clubs, and speaking candidly about his dreams and fears. Moments that cut through the mythology to reveal the person beneath. For the people who knew him before fame, the enduring fascination with his life can be bittersweet. They remember the days when he was simply Chris from the block, and they carry a version of him that is untouched by the world's projections. Some have shared that the hardest part of his legacy is seeing it controlled by forces far removed from the realities he came from. Yet even with the commercialization of his image, there remains a strong undercurrent of authenticity in how his story is told. The devastation of losing Biggie Smalls lies not only in the void he left in music, but in the countless possibilities that died with him. At 24, he had already achieved what many artists dream of for a lifetime. Yet he had barely begun to explore his full potential as a creator, businessman, and cultural leader. His trajectory suggested that he could have shaped the sound of an entire era, bridging divides and expanding the boundaries of hip-hop. That absence is felt not just in the beats and verses that were never recorded, but in the broader cultural conversations he could have influenced. What makes his story continue to resonate is the blend of personal relatability and larger-than-life narrative. He was at once a kid from Brooklyn trying to make good and a global superstar embodying the swagger and style of a generation. He spoke directly to those who knew the grind of trying to survive in a tough environment while also captivating audiences far removed from that reality with his charisma and craft. This duality, the ability to be both hyperlocal and universally appealing, is part of why his music still feels fresh, why his name still carries weight. The devastating tragedy of Biggie Smalls is not confined to the night he was killed. It is an ongoing absence, a reminder of what happens when talent, opportunity, and circumstance collide in both glorious and catastrophic ways. His life remains a testament to the heights that can be reached through artistry and determination, while his death stands as a sobering caution about the fragility of it all. In the end, Christopher Wallace's voice endures. In headphones, on street corners, at block parties, and academic halls, a lasting echo that refuses to be silenced. In the decades since Christopher Wallace's passing, the cultural landscape has continued to evolve, yet his shadow still stretches long over it. What's remarkable is how his influence adapts to new eras without losing the essence that made it so powerful in the first place. The arrival of the streaming age in the late 2000s and early 2010s fundamentally changed how music was consumed, yet Biggie's catalog not only survived this transition, it thrived. Younger listeners, many born years after his death, discovered him through playlists, algorithms, and viral moments on social media, where snippets of his most iconic verses circulate with the same vitality they had in the 90s. One reason his work resonates across time is its cinematic quality. His storytelling doesn't just provide a beat to nod to, it paints mental pictures. For a generation raised on visual media and constant imagery, this translates seamlessly. Songs like Everyday Struggle or Things Done Changed create fully fleshed out narratives, the kind of auditory experiences that reward repeated listening because new details emerge each time. His mastery of pacing, knowing when to linger on a moment, when to accelerate, when to drop a punchline, mirrors the rhythms of film editing. It's no coincidence that his music has been licensed extensively in movies and television. His voice carries the weight of a narrator guiding the audience through a lived experience. The preservation of his legacy has also taken on increasingly creative forms. In the 2010s, hologram technology allowed for virtual performances, including a posthumous appearance at a hip-hop festival. While such ventures were met with mixed feelings, some fans found them unsettling, others thrilling. They underscored how deeply people still long to see him on stage. Advances in AI vocal modeling have since sparked debates about whether technology should be used to recreate unreleased material or imagined collaborations. This raises ethical questions about artistic intent, consent, and the line between homage and exploitation. But it also shows that the appetite for Biggie's voice is far from satisfied. His story has also intersected with the rise of true crime as a dominant genre in popular media. Streaming services have poured resources into documentaries that revisit his murder with new evidence, interviews, and theories. Projects like The Last Days of Biggie Smalls and City of Lies, based on journalist Randall Sullivan's book, blend investigative reporting with dramatization, appealing to audiences beyond hip-hop fans. These productions are as much about the failings of the justice system as they are about the man himself, positioning his death within a larger narrative about systemic corruption and the blurred lines between celebrity culture and criminal underworlds. In academic circles, there's been a noticeable shift toward framing his work within broader cultural studies. Scholars explore how his lyrics reflect the socio-political realities of 1980s and 1990s New York, gentrification, the crack epidemic, policing practices, and racial inequities. Papers dissect his use of coded language and double entendre, linking it to African-American oral traditions that stretch back generations. In doing so, they position him not only as a product of his environment, but also as a conscious commentator on it, an artist whose craft was steeped in historical awareness even when it came wrapped in bravado. The commercial use of his image has also expanded significantly. Murals remain a grassroots form of tribute, but his likeness now appears on officially licensed sneakers, high-end fashion collaborations, and limited edition vinyl reissues. Each product release sparks conversations about commodification, whether turning him into a brand dilutes the meaning of his work or spreads it to audiences who might otherwise miss it. This tension between preservation and commercialization is not unique to Biggie, but it feels particularly poignant given that his art often critiqued the very economic systems that now profit from his memory. What's perhaps more interesting is how his name functions as cultural shorthand. Politicians, athletes, and actors invoke him in speeches and interviews, often quoting lines from Juicy or Hypnotize to convey themes of ambition, resilience, or self-made success. Even outside of music, being compared to Biggie is seen as a mark of mastery in one's field, a way of saying someone dominates their lane with skill and style. This cross-disciplinary reverence has helped cement his place not just in hip-hop history, but in the broader pantheon of American cultural icons. In his home borough, his presence remains tangible. Community initiatives and youth programs bear his name, using his story as a way to connect with young people facing challenges similar to those he overcame. These efforts frame him not solely as a cautionary tale, but as a model for channeling talent into opportunity. Local organizers often stress that his life, not just his death, should be the focal point, emphasizing his discipline as a writer, his dedication to craft, and his ability to pivot from street hustle to professional artistry. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Biggie's tragedy? What do you expect I'll reveal? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.